Doctors and experts. 2.56K. 34. Doctors and experts with the courage to tell the truth about distilled water. Distilled water is the only water which runs through all water-based life forms. Here are the writings of doctors and experts who all support the benefits of distilled water. Take note of the steady, consistent volume which is recommended by them. Dr. Arthur R. Reynolds. It may safely be taught that the only absolutely pure water is that purified by distillation. Instruct the public how distillation can readily and cheaply be done. It furnishes a fruitful yield for the genius that will devise a small distilling apparatus for the use of every family. It would be safe to teach that the generous use of pure water both within and without the body has never yet done any harm, that the functional ailments that afflict the great host of mankind, are in a great part due to the fact of the imperfect elimination of waste matter, and that generous libations of pure water is a most potent agent to flush them from the body, through the skin, the lungs, the kidneys and the bowels. The diseases caused by impure water are numerous and fatal. Dr. Arthur R. Reynolds, M.D., Health Commissioner of Chicago, From Distilled Water and Longevity by Elmer Ellsworth Carey, Chicago, in Suggestion Magazine, Volume 10, January 1, 1903. Dr. Gary Null. You should drink at least 1 gallon of purified water a day. Most of us drink only at mealtime and when we're noticeably thirsty. Wrong. You can develop a habit of not drinking water and walk around being 66 or 67% water, instead of 74%, which is what your body needs. When you don't have the water in you, you won't ever have the energy you need. The very first thing I do to get people's energy up is to increase the amount of water in their diet. Immediately, their energy goes up. When someone has dementia, the first thing I do is give them lots of cold water all day, every day. About 3 weeks later, I start to see their dementia dissipate because they have rehydrated their brains. Unfortunately, your brain actually shrinks as you dehydrate. By drinking lots of pure water, you get better neuron activity and better cellular chemistry, and you're able to detoxify the cells with water. Water has to be pure, free from fluoride, chlorine, and chemicals, which is why I recommend distilled water. To achieve optimum health, I recommend that you drink a half gallon to 1 full gallon per day. Dr. Gary Null, Ph.D., from Gary Null's Ultimate Anti-Aging Program, Kensington Publishing Corporation, 1999, based on the PBS documentary, How to Live Forever. Dr. C.W. DeLacy Evans. Used as a drink, distilled water is absorbed directly into the blood, the solvent properties of which it increases to such an extent that it will keep in solution salts already existing in the blood, prevent their undue deposit in various organs and structures, favor their elimination by the various excreta, and tend to remove these earthy compounds which have already accumulated in the body. There is no doubt as to the high value of distilled water used freely as a retarder of the ossifying conditions which appear to constitute the condition of old age. Dr. C.W. DeLacy Evans, M.D., from How to Prolong Life. Nikola Tesla. Only a lunatic will drink unsterilized water. Nikola Tesla, when asked about his predictions for the next 100 years in an article appearing in Liberty magazine, February 9, 1935. Bernardo McFadden, it is important that we give to the body a sufficient quantity of pure water in order that the blood may be kept in its normal fluid condition, and the disease-producing effete matter eliminated. There is no cleansing agent as important as water, not only for the exterior of the body, but for the interior from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet. It is a simple matter to drink a glass of water, yet the results of the act are marvelous. A very small portion of it enters the intestines, but by far the larger quantity is absorbed into the blood and enters immediately into the circulation of this life-giving fluid. One is almost driven, if he be particular as to his water supply, to the use of distilled water. Bernardo McFadden, from McFadden's Encyclopedia of Physical Culture, 1911. Baby's bath, have ready also a glass of distilled water, a few spoonfuls of which will prove a refreshing drink to baby after his bath. Baby's natural food, the secretion of the breast, proves all that baby requires, unless it be an occasional spoonful of distilled water. Bernard and Marguerite McFadden, from Physical Culture for Babies 1904. Dr. Alexander Graham Bell. I thought if I drank plenty of it, I might get rid of some of the salts that were covering my sciatic nerves. I tried drinking it, and it worked like a charm. Within a short time my sciatica left me and I have been free of rheumatism from that day to this. I have kept up my drinking of distilled water and I attribute my almost perfect health largely to it. Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the telephone. Jack Bell, American Medical Association. To the best of our knowledge, there would not be any adverse health effects from the continued ingestion of distilled water. Jack A. Bell, Assistant Director, May 17, 1985, American Medical Association, Division of Personal and Public Health Policy. Dr. Brian Clement. Distilled water is a pure water. A lot of people have been misled into believing that it robs minerals out of the body. Well, in my life, I've been drinking distilled water for 35 years. University of California, Los Angeles, several years ago, told me I had the bone density of a 22-year-old athlete. So, if in fact distilled water robbed the body of minerals, I would probably be crippled by now. Dr. Brian Clement, from the video, Why Choose Distilled Water? Dr. Alan E. Bannock. What we as scientists and the public have never realized is that minerals collected in the body from water are all inorganic minerals, which cannot be assimilated, digested, by the body. The only minerals that the body can utilize are the organic minerals, from fruits and vegetables. All other types of minerals are foreign substances to the body and must be disposed of or eliminated. Distilled water then is water of the purest kind. It is odorless, colorless and tasteless. The divine purpose of water is to act as a solvent. In nature, water in evaporation is so fine that your eye cannot perceive it as it is drawn up into the clouds. Then it falls as rain, keeping the earth from being parched and burned. As a solvent, it dissolves rocks and soil. It figures in the transport of nutrients into plant life. In the human body, water fills similar functions. Distilled water acts as a solvent in the body. It dissolves food substances so they can be assimilated and taken into every cell. It dissolves inorganic mineral substances lodged in tissues of the body so that such substances can be eliminated in the process of purifying the body. Distilled water is the greatest solvent on earth, the only one that can be taken into the body without damage to the tissues. The average person drinks about a gallon of water per day. This gallon isn't too much. Many men drink much more. Today, many progressive doctors prescribe distilled water to their patients. Alan E. Bannock, MD. Excerpts from The Choice is Clear. Douglas Hoover. I personally have been drinking a gallon of distilled water per day for over 40 years. I fast all food for a minimum of 21 days annually. Over the years I have done 3 40-day fasts on just distilled water. I fasted a year ago for 60 days, 40 days, then a break of 6 days eating only vegetables, and then continued another 20 days, for a total of 60 out of 66 days. No early death here, just perfect health and longevity. I guess a man with an experience is not at the mercy of a man with an argument. Change your water and change your health. Drink distilled water purified nature's way, evaporation and condensation. $10,000 cash will be paid to anyone who can prove that early death comes from drinking distilled water. Douglas Hoover, author of Distilled Water and Health, founder of Aquamedia Research Group, DistilledWaterAuthority.com and DistillationStation.com. For $10,000 reward, send your published research paper and blind studies to Aquamedia Research Group, P.O. Box 710523, San Diego, California 92171. Dr. Richard Schultz. Only distilled water, the emptiest water is allowed. Distilled water is so empty, it is like a vacuum. It is the universal solvent especially for unwanted mineral deposits. Just by drinking distilled water on a regular basis you dissolve stones, and prevent new ones from forming. Dr. Richard Schultz, North Dakota, MH from his kidney stone dissolving routine. Sanford Bennett. It is Mr. Bennett's theory that old age and ill health are caused by the collection in the arteries and about the joints of lime and clay sediments contained in drinking water. This mineral coating, he believes, interrupts the proper circulation of the blood, prevents the necessary irrigation of the skin, produces stiffness of the joints and dulls the action of the brain. Distilled water and olive oil, one used internally, the other used externally, are my elixirs of youth, declared Mr. Bennett. They will counteract the decaying conditions in the body. You must drink large quantities of distilled water, rub yourself with pure California olive oil, and take a moderate exercise. That is the secret which my friends have so long wished to learn. Why, 10 years ago I could not read without glasses. Today, I can read the smallest print without artificial aid of any kind. Mr. Sanford Bennett, Excerpted from the San Francisco Call, September 24, 1900. Drive. Homer Wakefield, water, free from impurities. Any amount of it may be taken into the system without fear of detrimental results. Physicians know it is the best solvent of inorganic concretions in the body. There is nothing more wholesome than pure distilled water, tightly corked in clean bottles, protected from contaminations of even impure air. Pure water, well corked, never gets stale. Dr. Homer Wakefield, MD, of Bloomington, Ill., from the article, Pure Water Not a Poison in the National Druggist, Volumes 29-30, 1899. Bodybuilding legend Kelly Everts. I often use my water distiller. Absolutely pure distilled water is the best thing you can drink. I also employ juicing, all the roots as well, and use the blender. In the blender I cut up oranges and grapefruits into small pieces, add water, and blend until liquid. The white parts of these fruits contain valuable bioflavonoids. Kelly Everts, from Campaign for Women's Bodybuilding, interview with the true champion of women's bodybuilding. Dr. Clifford C. Dennison. There are hundreds of case histories of people who have enjoyed success in alleviating or overcoming these health problems: arthritis, heart disease, high blood pressure, hardening of the arteries, kidney stones, gallstones, cataracts and emphysema, when they began drinking distilled water exclusively. Dr. Clifford C. Dennison, Ed.D., an associate professor at Lee College in Cleveland, Tennessee, and a lifelong water researcher. Edgar Cayce. Also highly recommended was an ample fluid intake. A general suggestion was 6 to 8 glasses of pure water daily to aid in the elimination of toxic wastes from the kidneys. Cayce also advised drinking half to 3/4 of a glass of lukewarm water each morning on arising to help clear the kidneys. In general, large amounts of water are best taken between meals rather than with them. From Edgar Cayce Encyclopedia of Healing by Reba Ann Karp. The following is from Water, Symbol of Life, an article by Hugh Lynn Cayce discussing Edgar Cayce's readings on water. Everyone should drink at least 5 or 6 glasses of liquid every day. This may be in the form of fruit or vegetable juices, milk, water or other liquids. Keep plenty of water in the system, so that eliminations through the body are good. Number 137-101. There should be more water taken into the system, in a more consistent manner, so that the system, especially in the hepatics and kidneys, may function more normally. Thus the correct manner of elimination of dross will be produced in the system. For there are many channels of elimination from the system. Lack of water in the system creates an excess of those drosses which would normally be cleansed through the alimentary canal in the kidneys, and forces these drosses back into the capillary circulation. This brings about congestion and a weakened condition, either through mental strain or physical strain for portions of the system, producing ill effects. Number 257p7. We need more water in the system, systematically taken, so that the acid in the system may be dissolved. Number 779p5. To relieve these catarrhal conditions, we would first of all take more water into the system. Drink quantities of water. Have a specific time, and keep the system flooded with water until eliminations are fully set up throughout the system. Number 779p6. We see then how important it is to establish firmly a fixed habit of drinking plenty of water, regardless of whether we are thirsty. We may not relish the idea, but it can be done. Apparently thirst is not a reliable indicator of the body's optimum need for water. In reading number 257p7, the question was asked, how can desire for more water be created? This was the answer. Desire for water can be created by taking it, so that the body will call for it when the habit has once been started. Edgar Cayce, from Water, Symbol of Life, an article by Hugh Lynn Cayce in the Searchlight, a publication of the Association for Research and Enlightenment, Incorporated, Virginia Beach, VA, August 1956, Volume 8, Number 8. Dr. Suzanne Bennett. Purified water comes from 2 methods of filtration, either distillation or reverse osmosis. Many patients ask me, isn't distilled water dead water? There are no minerals in it. Yes, both distilled and reverse osmosis water are devoid of minerals, but ingesting mineral-free purified water is not harmful to your body. Drink the right amount of purified water. Dehydration slows your metabolism down, as well as the natural healing process of the body. When you drink adequate amounts of water, you can reduce allergenic symptoms and feel more alert and energetic. Dr. Suzanne Bennett DC, CCSP, from The Hidden Dangers of Drinking Water, July 19, 2012, in the Huffington Post. Dr. Chester Hanley. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of drinking distilled water for cleansing the bloodstream, for reducing arthritic pain and lowering blood pressure. It has also been known to reduce cholesterol and triglycerides. In fact, the only effect on the body is health. There are rules of thumb on how much water to drink. The rule of thumb on a normal day is 1/2 your body weight in ounces per day. If you are sweating and exerting yourself, you should drink more, not less. We have a tendency to grab pop, coffee, Kool-Aid and juices, but we need to get back to the habit of grabbing distilled water. To give you an example of what this means, if you are a man and you weigh 200 pounds, you should be drinking a minimum of 100 ounces of distilled water throughout the day. There is an interesting side note for people that like to study. Job, which is the oldest book of the Bible, I believe it is in the 36th chapter, said God took up the water, distilled it, and poured it out abundantly on man. The logical argument is who knows better what we need than the Creator, and He gave us distilled water. Dr. Chester Hanley DC, MD, from his article, The Importance of Distilled Water in Aging. Job. For He draws up the drops of water, He distills His mist in the rain which the skies pour down, and drop upon man abundantly. Job, from, the Holy Bible, Job 36 hours 27 minutes. Dr. Edmund Hanisch. Oftentimes the blood becomes tainted and needs to be purified. There is only one way of washing the blood, and that is by means of dead water, undiluted water, distilled water which contains no life organism, chemicals or similar substances. It has to be dead water, that is water condensed from steam. Distilled water, by virtue of its weight, effects a 1-pound pressure upon the minerals and acids which clog the bloodstream. It presses them right through the system. Even in a short time it eliminates appreciable quantities of impurities from the blood. There is no hard and fast rule as to how to take the cure. It may be taken quickly or slowly, hot or cold. It is left entirely to the individual to decide according to temperament and physical condition. The main thing is to obtain the necessary pressure and to ensure that 2 cups are always taken at one time, a total of 7 pints per day. This is quite easy of accomplishment if the quantity is systematically regulated as follows. 1. On awakening take 2 cups. 2. Another 2 cups shortly before breakfast. 3. 2 cups in the middle of the morning. 4. 2 more 20 to 30 minutes before the midday meal. 5. 2 cups in the middle of the afternoon. 6. Another 2 cups 20 to 30 minutes before dinner. 7. The last 2 cups in the evening shortly before retiring. If desired, 2 more portions may be taken 1-2 hours after lunch, and the other 2 hours after dinner. As regards to eating and drinking, it is a matter of individual choice. Nothing is forbidden and there is no need for fasting nor privation. One may eat and drink according to individual needs. One eats only moderately after having taken 2 cups of distilled water. The principle of the cure must be maintained, that is, 7 times per day. 2 cups of water at one time, making sure to take 2 cups shortly before each meal. Dr. Edmund Hanisch, MD, DD, from the Distilled Water Cure. ANN and Palmolimus. We consume a substantial amount of distilled water. Not only just from the glass to drink, but believe it or not, all of our fruits and vegetables have distilled water in them, so when we consume those, we consume distilled water in them. The plant juices really are the purest water, because the roots act as a filtering system, and so it filters out the impurity. It converts the minerals that are in the ground that are difficult for the body to assimilate, into a mineral that the body can assimilate easily. And Palmolimus, Hallelujah Acres, Purified versus Distilled Water Q&A, www.youtube.com web link. Dr. Norman W. Walker. People who say that distilled water leaches minerals out of the body are, therefore, correct only in this respect. This is only 50% of the truth. It is virtually impossible for distilled water to separate minerals, which have become an integral part of the cells and tissues of the body. Distilled water collects only the minerals which remain in the body, minerals discarded from natural water and from the cells, the minerals which the natural water originally collected from its contact with the earth and the rocks. Such minerals, having been rejected by the cells of the body, are of no constructive value. On the contrary, they are debris which distilled water is capable of picking up and eliminating from the system. How much juice can be taken safely? just as much as one can drink comfortably without forcing oneself. As a general rule, 1 pint daily is the least that will show any perceptible results, and preferably from 2 to 8 pints or more. We must bear in mind that the more juice we drink, the quicker the results. Drive. Norman W. Walker, from his books, Water Can Undermine Your Health and Fresh Vegetable and Fruit Juices respectively. Dr. Roland Idle. The distilled water helps clean the inorganic minerals from our body that have accumulated over the years. It helps transport the toxins out of our body. And we need an abundance of this water, initially, as we are trying to help the body flush these toxins out so that we do not have to deal with a lot of symptoms of detoxification from cleansing. Dr. Roland Idle, North Dakota, CNC, from Distilled Water, www.youtube.com web link. Dr. Max Gerson. The Gerson Household Kitchen Supplies, Water Distiller. Gerson patients need pure water. Most cities have bottled water businesses that deliver purified and distilled water to homes. If your municipal water supply is fluoridated, it is imperative that you use distilled water for all patient intake. Dr. Max Gerson, MD, from Gerson Therapy Handbook. Dr. Cheryl R. Scott. I just completed a 40-day distilled waters fast to heal myself from significant degeneration of my knees secondary to osteoarthritis. My fast was fairly simple and straightforward. My goal was to fast on 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons of distilled water each day. I would pound a pound, drink a pint quickly, at least every 1-2 hours. I was able to obtain a 6-week medical leave of absence, and on day 1 of my medical leave I began fasting on 1.5 gallons of distilled water. I am ecstatic with the results. I lost 35 pounds, which was very important for my knees. My objective was to remove inorganic mineral deposits throughout my body, like years and years of arterial plaque buildup. However, I primarily desired to remove all the mineral deposits in all of my joints, which are greatly impacted by osteoarthritis. 7 weeks ago, I had to order a seated walker to use at work in my role as a nurse consultant. Now that I have finished my 40-day distilled waters fast, I can walk and stand for hours with minimal pain. I had my chem panels and lipid panels drawn at 21 days and 40 days into my distilled water fast, and my magnesium/phosphorus and calcium levels were always perfectly normal. This proved to me that drinking distilled water does not leach organic minerals from our tissues. And my LDL and triglyceride levels are the best they have ever been. I returned to work in 3 days feeling much better and able to do my work without the need for a walker. This 50-something RN is very grateful for distilled waters therapies. Namaste. Dr. Cheryl R. Scott, RN, PhD, IVCLC. Dr. J. H. Tilden. By using succulent fruits and vegetables in scurvy, or acidosis, much distilled water is furnished the body with which to flush out the accumulated putrescence. Fruit and vegetables contain over 90% water. Dr. J. H. Tilden, MD, from Impaired Health, Its Cause and Cure, A Repudiation of the Conventional Treatment of Disease, 1921. Dr. Charles Mayo. Water hardness, inorganic minerals in solution, is the underlying cause of many, if not all, of the diseases resulting from poisons in the intestinal tract. These, hard minerals, pass from the intestinal walls and get into the lymphatic system, which delivers all of its products to the blood, which in turn, distributes to all parts of the body. This is the cause of much human disease. Water hardness is inorganic minerals in solution in water. When these minerals enter the intestines in drinking water, there is an immediate reaction between them and the fats, oils and fatty acids present, causing precipitation of inorganic calcium, magnesium, iron and so on, to form new, insoluble compounds. Dr. Charles Mayo of the Mayo Clinic. Louis Pasteur. We drink 90% of our illnesses. Louis Pasteur. Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, from Dr. J. H. Kellogg, the physician-in-chief of the Battle Creek Sanitarium, in Good Health magazine for June, 1899, says of distilled water. It is free from germs, free from injurious salts, from lime and other substances with which they are found in combination, if not always of the same uniform quality. From Distilled Water and Longevity by Elmer Ellsworth Carey, Chicago, in Suggestion Magazine, Volume 10, January 1, 1903. Still another use for water is to dissolve and wash out of our bodies, through the sweat of the skin, and in other ways, the waste and worn out particles which are no longer of any use. Most waters have more or less substances dissolved in them. Water which has much lime in it is called hard water. Such water is not so good to drink, or for use in cooking, as soft water. That water is best which holds no substances in solution. The purest water is the best. Impure water causes sickness. Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, from Dr. John Harvey Kellogg's Child's Guide to Health and Hygiene. Aristotle. Salt water when it turns into vapor becomes sweet, and the vapor does not form salt water again, when it condenses. This I know by experiment. The same thing is true in every case of this kind. Wine and all fluids that evaporate and condense into a liquid state become water. They are all water modified by a certain admixture, the nature of which determines the flavor. If one plunges a watertight vessel of wax into the ocean, it will hold, after 24 hours, a certain quantity of water, that filtered into it through the waxen walls, and this water will be found to be potable, because the earthy and salty components have been sieved off. Aristotle, from Meteorologica, 2. 3, first published in 350 BC. Dr. Brownland Dunn. Anyone drinking distilled water exclusively would eventually return to normal weight. The reason: hard water film imprisons the cells so tissues become waterlogged. Retention of fluid is the chief cause of obesity. Distilled water again breaks the cell barrier and the body weight returns to normal. Weight Watchers will lose weight, regardless of present diet, if they include 4-6 glasses of distilled water each day taken a half hour before each meal. Dr. Brownland Dunn, neurologist, www.viafosa.com web link. Dr. Raymond H. Bishop Jr. Distilled water is safe to drink and should have no adverse effects on your health. Distillation merely removes most of the dissolved materials, which are found in all natural waters. Raymond H. Bishop Jr. MD, Major General, Commander, Medical Corps. Department of the Army, U.S. Army Health Services Command. Dr. Aaron Tucker. Distilled water is the acme of purity. Nothing can be purer than that which is absolutely pure. For medicinal purposes, the highest authorities are agreed that pure water is preferable to the so-called medicinal spring waters. The latter all contain more or less impurities in the form of earthy salts or organic matter, which is not the case with distilled water. For flushing the kidneys, stimulating the sluggish liver, eliminating waste matter from the system, indeed for all affections in which medical waters are believed to be efficacious, pure distilled water furnishes the long-sought desideratum. Dr. Aaron Tucker, Chicago, from Distilled Water and Longevity by Elmer Ellsworth Carey, Chicago, in Suggestion Magazine, Volume 10, January 1, 1903. Eldon C. Mealing. Liquid water is the best known solvent in existence. In fact, it is commonly referred to as the universal solvent. This means it can dissolve more of the greatest number of substances than any other liquid. Water molecules, in contact with foreign substances, have been compared to cowboys cutting cattle from a herd. They force their way between clusters of particles, break them apart and hold them at bay. Merely filtering the water is like using a band-aid. Distillation, on the other hand, is more like doing surgery on the water. Eldon C. Mealing, excerpts from Pure Water Now, It's Time for Action. Dr. Paul, Connecticut. When one drinks impure, dirty water, the body acts as a filter, trapping a percentage of the solids suspended in the water. A filter eventually becomes clogged and useless, fit only to be thrown away. The human body might well face the same fate. But the basic point, that only distilled water avoids mineral buildups in the body, is an inarguable one. The deposits, which build up in a tea kettle from repeated use, are traces of minerals left behind as the water evaporates. Distilled water leaves no such traces, in a tea kettle or in the human body. It is true that in most hospitals distilled water is used for newborn infants, distilled water is prescribed for heart patients in many cardiac wards. And it is true that kidney stones and other mineral-like buildups in the body are much more common in the areas where the drinking water has high levels in inorganic minerals, and distilled water has none of those at all. It is without doubt the best water available to man, and the only truly pure water available in our waste-laden society. Dr. Paul, Connecticut, from Not a Drop to Drink. Dr. David Williamson. Distillation is effective because it removes the water from the contaminants, rather than trying to remove the contaminants from the water. Distillers have several major advantages over other purification systems. A good distillation system pretty much eliminates the need to ever have your water tested. It's the only purification system I know that removes every kind of bacteria, virus, parasite, and pathogen, as well as pesticides, herbicides, organic and inorganic chemicals, heavy metals, dissolved or otherwise, and even radioactive contaminants. Dr. David Williamson, D.C., from Why You Should Drink Distilled Water. Dr. Harold D. Foster. Interestingly, studies examining the role that cholesterol may play in plaque formation have shown that the 42 amino acid form of beta amyloid builds up more easily in the brains of rabbits given tap water than it does if these animals drink distilled water. Obviously, this suggests a water quality role in Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Harold D. Foster, from What Really Causes Alzheimer's Disease. Dr. Russell T. Trawl. And the matchless sanative who has not known of its marvelous cures? 25 or 30 years ago it was all the rage in some places. I have seen many chronic invalids who had worn out half a dozen regular physicians, and swallowed the whole round of patent nostrums, but nothing ever did them so much good as the matchless sanative. Well, it was a matchless medicine. It was the very best remedy, as a universal panacea, ever sold to an afflicted mortal at an extravagant price, for it was pure water, and nothing else. Dr. Russell T. Trawl, M.D., from The True Healing Art, or Hygienic versus Drug Medication, an address delivered at the Smithsonian Institute, Washington, D.C., 1862. Water. To the days of the aged it addeth length. To the might of the strong it addeth strength. It freshens the heart, it brightens the sight. 'Tis like quaffing a goblet of morning light. If children were properly educated, or rather, if medical men had not miseducated the world, every ABC schoolboy and girl would have known that pure air and pure water are the best. Dr. Russell T. Trawl, M.D., from The Month, a column in the Herald of Health, New York, December, 1863. Dr. John R. Christopher. Water is so valuable to the entire system of the human body that it is wise to use only the best. Use pure steam distilled water for health and well-being. Dr. John R. Christopher, from Regenerative Diet. Dr. Peter A. Ludwig. The only type of water that seems to be fit for consumption is distilled water, which is water that is absolutely free of any minerals or chemicals. Distilled water is made pure by first being heated to the point of vaporization, so that all of the impurities are left behind. Then, the water vapor is condensed. The process results in water that is in its purest form. Distillation is the single most effective method of water purification. Peter A. Ludwig, M.D., from A Diabetic Doctor Looks at Diabetes. Dr. John Yayamuyanis. The home distiller is the best method and also the best way to get distilled water. It is the only reliable home water purification for taking fluoride out of the water. John Yayamuyanis, Ph.D., from Fluoride, the Aging Factor. Acting Chief of Bureau, J. F. Urey. I have to state that there can be no two opinions as to the protection distilled water affords to crews of vessels and to stations of the Navy against infection from such diseases as are waterborne. When only distilled water is used for drinking and other purposes, diseases of this class, as for example, cholera and typhoid, are little feared. It is conclusively proven that a large number of diseases to which human beings are a prey are introduced into the economy by means of contaminated water used for drinking purposes. Distilled water, as prepared and stored for use in the Navy, is of course free from infectious agents, and its general use is a source of great comfort to the medical officers who have the maintenance of the health of the many men in their charge. When the water supply is under control, as on board vessels of war, little apprehension is felt of the introduction of cholera, typhoid, etc. The numerous animal parasites that prey upon mankind and that are known to be waterborne find little place in the medical statistics of the Navy. In conclusion, I would say that the general use of distilled water in the Navy is considered one of the principal factors in establishing the high standard of health that is maintained in the Navy of today. J. F. Urey, Acting Chief of Bureau, Department of the Navy, Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, from Distilled Water and Longevity by Elmer Ellsworth Carey, Chicago, in Suggestion Magazine, Volume 10, 1903. Dr. Robert D. Willix, Jr. If you decide on bottled water, make sure it's distilled. However, in the long run you'll save money if you clean your water at home. It's more convenient than hauling gallon jugs from the store. The gold standard for purifying water is a system that distills your water and filters it. You have the comfort of knowing there is no chlorine, fluoride, bacteria, viruses, pesticides, or lead. You get nothing but H2O. Robert D. Willix, Jr., MD from Maximum Health. Dr. Van D. Ienberg. Pure water, with as little solid matter as possible, and water that is especially free from lime salts, is about the only drink that can be said to be good for rheumatism. Dr. Vandenberg, of New York, from Hygiene and Suggestion Magazine, Volume 10, January 1, 1903. Dr. Andrew Weil. You can try drinking bottled distilled water if you like. It's water that has been turned into steam so its impurities are left behind. The steam is then condensed to make pure water. The process of distillation kills and removes virtually all bacteria, viruses, heavy metals, and other organic and inorganic contaminants. Once distilled, the water is as pure as water can reasonably be. As far as acidity goes, distilled water is close to a neutral pH and has no effect on the body's acid-base balance. Distilled water is safe to drink, and the kind of water I use myself. Dr. Andrew Weil, MD, www.joel.com web link. Dr. Edward M. Bognor. Chronic fatigue syndrome sufferers are instructed to drink distilled water. Dr. Edward M. Wagner, from How to Stay Out of the Doctor's Office. Dr. David C. Kennedy. Even tap water invariably contains a variety of poisons such as chlorine, chloramine, asbestos, pesticides, fluoride, copper, mercury, and lead. The best way to remove all these contaminants is by distilling. David C. Kennedy, DDS, How to Save Your Teeth, Toxic-Free Preventative Dentistry. Dr. Robert W. Flinchbot. The evidence that distilled water acts as a solvent within the body, dissolving the inorganic mineral deposits, is very important. A growing body of evidence suggests that distilled water dissolves and removes these disease-causing minerals and flushes out the hundreds of dangerous chemicals that have been taken into the body as well. Distilled water is not only free from pollutants, but it apparently helps remove them as well from the cells of the body, thus purifying the body so that it can function as it should. Dr. Robert W. Flinchbot, from Pure Water is Life. Vicki Glassburn. Distilled water is the purest form available. Distilled water helps to excrete excessive heavy metals from the body. Vicki Glassburn, from Who Killed Candida? Dr. Charles McFerrin. Distilled water is empty water, a hungry water, a water capable of absorbing body poisons. You have had the experience of trying to use an old post office blotter on the desk. Everybody had used it and it is so full of ink that it will not suck up anymore. So it is with a full water, a water full of chlorine, aluminum, etc. Such water does not have the capacity of absorbing body impurities. Dr. Charles McFerrin, writing in the July 1955 issue of Nature's Path. Dr. Charles W. Littlefield. Evaporation of water, a process universal on sea and land, generates a subtle magnetism which is the vital force of plants and animals. Dr. Charles W. Littlefield, MD, from Man, Minerals, and Masters, 1937. Dr. William Lamb. The late Dr. Lamb, of London, was so thoroughly convinced of the importance of the purest water in the treatment of cancers, scrofula, and cachexias generally, that he restricted his patients to the use of distilled water. And his success was remarkable. From Herald of Health, Volume 2, in the article, The Hygiene Home by Russell T. Trall, MD. Dr. Tofiliota Tor. Instead of drinking the hard water of springs or the chlorinated water of the cities, it will be to our advantage to drink distilled water, to prevent calcification of the body. Dr. Tofilio de la Torre. Major Walter Talcott. I am directed by the Acting Surgeon General to state that existing orders in the Philippines require all drinking water used by United States troops to be distilled, or at places where this cannot be done, to be boiled 20 minutes. It is not too much to say that this precaution has saved an enormous number of lives during the prevalence of cholera and has prevented many cases of typhoid fever, dysentery and intestinal parasites. Cases of cholera among troops in the Philippine Islands have been repeatedly traced to drinking impure water in violation of this order. No deleterious effect of any kind has been attributed to the daily use of distilled or boiled water. Major Walter Talcott, Surgeon U.S. Army, from Distilled Water and Longevity by Elmer Ellsworth Carey, Chicago, in Suggestion Magazine, Volume 10, 1903. Dr. James Balch. There is only one water, and that is clean, steam distilled water. No other substance on our planet does so much to keep us healthy and get us well as water does. Dr. James Balch, MD, from Dietary Wellness. National Cancer Institute. Distilled water, An ultra-pure form of water with potential antiaplastic activity. Derived by boiling impure water and condensing the resultant steam in a sterile container, distilled water has been shown to kill bladder cancer cells in vitro through osmotic lysis, cytolysis. National Cancer Institute, www.cancer.gov web link. Dr. Paul Bragg. The greatest damage done by inorganic minerals, hard plus waxy cholesterol and salt, is to the small arteries and other blood vessels of the brain, 75% water. Hardening of the arteries and calcification of blood vessels starts on the day you start taking inorganic chemicals, and minerals from tap water, into our bodies. When distilled water enters the body, it leaves no residue of any kind. It is free of salts and sodium. It is the most perfect water for the healthy functioning of the kidneys, 83% water. It is the perfect liquid for the blood, 83% water, the ideal liquid for the efficient functioning of the lungs, 86% water, stomach, liver, 85% water, and other vital organs. Why? Because it is free of all inorganic minerals. It is so pure that all liquid drug prescriptions are formulated with distilled water. Dr. Paul Bragg, North Dakota, Ph.D., from The Shocking Truth About Water. Dr. J.G. Webster. Common water can be rendered perfectly pure by distillation. It is not possible in the very nature of things, in the organization of our bodies and in its relations to external objects, to improve upon pure water, neither as a circulating fluid conveying nourishment to the tissues of our bodies, nor as a quencher of thirst. Pure water circulates through the most delicate tissues, without the least perceptible friction or irritation, without the least perceptible disturbance to the senses, except by its temperature, as it may be warmer or cooler than the tissues, and when applied to an abraded surface, it falls on it as harmlessly and blandly as falls the snowflake on the river. Dr. J.G. Webster, M.D., from the Two Systems, an article in the Herald of Health, Volume 2, Number 5, New York, November, 1863. Dr. Wayne Pickering. Distilled water acts as a solvent in the body. It dissolves food substances so they can be assimilated and taken into every cell. It dissolves inorganic mineral substance, acid crystals and all other waste products so that these can be eliminated in the process of purifying the body. Distilled water has the inherent characteristics of a magnet, which picks discarded minerals and with the assistance of the blood and the lymph, transports them to the kidneys for elimination. It is this kind of mineral elimination that is erroneously referred to as leaching. The notion that distilled water leaches minerals from the body is inaccurate. It does nothing of the sort. Distilled water collects and removes inorganic mineral that have been rejected by the cells and tissues and which, if not evacuated, can cause serious damage. Odorless, colorless and tasteless, distilled water contains no solid matter of any kind, no minerals, organic or inorganic, and is made solely of the two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. It can be used as a drinking water, for cooking, for electric irons and batteries, and it is so pure that it is used for intravenous feeding, inhalation therapy, prescriptions and baby formulas. Enjoy a guaranteed clean glass of distilled water the next time you need something to drink and relax. Dr. Wayne Pickering, from the Distilled Water Myth. Dr. Herbert M. Shelton. A frequent development while fasting is a dislike for water. This is particularly true if the water is hard. Hard water that, while one is eating, tastes pleasant enough, is rejected by the sharpened sense of taste. In such cases we find the use of distilled water to be satisfactory. Dr. Herbert M. Shelton, North Dakota, from The Science and Fine Art of Fasting, The Hygienic System, Volume 3. Federal Emergency Management Agency. There are many materials that electricity doesn't like to flow through. Air, for example, is one thing that electricity can't flow through very easily. Air is an insulator. Other insulators include rubber, glass, ceramics, wood, many plastics and, surprisingly enough, distilled water. Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, www.usfa.fema.gov web link. Dr. Carrie A. Reams. One of the most important is the Distilled Water Cleansing Program. Although most people don't realize it, they have a lot of sugar, including white sugar, sugar from honey, and sugar from fruit, packed into their muscles and fatty tissues. It's packed in there because their sugar metabolism wasn't functioning properly. Their body neither burned those sugars for energy nor excreted them. Until these stored sugars are flushed out of the system, the body may release them into the blood at any time, disrupting the blood sugar level. The distilled water cleansing program is designed to rid the body of these sugars, thus clearing the way for a stable blood sugar level. Dr. Carrie Ames, in response to the question, "What else do you do to help the hypoglycemics?" from a 1978 interview with Acres USA. Drinking distilled water would help alleviate this problem of Bechtere's heart attack. Extreme fatigue, nervous tension, wrinkles in the forehead, all will be alleviated with the drinking of distilled water. Dr. Carrie Ames, from Health Guide for Survival by Salem Kurban. Frank N. Hepburn, USDA. There is nothing about distilled water that would make it harmful for the body. It may be helpful to remember that distilled water is the only water available for crews of naval vessels at sea. Frank N. Hepburn, Chief, Nutrient Data Research Branch, United States Department of Agriculture, Consumer Nutrition Division. Dr. Michael Colgan. Distilled water is water which has been heated to the boiling point so that impurities are separated from the water, which itself becomes vapor or steam. It is then condensed back into pure liquid form. The impurities remain in the residue, which is simply thrown away. Distilled water contains no solids, minerals or trace elements, and has no taste. Distillation removes the debris, bacteria, and other contaminants. Distilled water has been a water purity standard in analytical labs, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and many other industries for many years, and more recently a gold standard for drinking. Distillation duplicates nature's hydrologic cycle. The sun's heat vaporizes the water and draws it from the Earth's surface into the atmosphere. The impurities remain. As the vapor cools, it falls back to the Earth as rain, snow, and other precipitation. As it leaves the clouds, the precipitation is pure, but as it makes its descent to the Earth, it picks up the various forms of pollution found in the air. Then, as it reaches the ground, the water continues to pick up contaminants on its way back to the various bodies of water on the Earth. In mechanized distillation, water is boiled in a distiller, which creates steam that rises and leaves virtually all contaminants behind in the boiling chamber. Steam is then collected and condensed into pure, clean distilled water, leaving the impurities behind to eventually flush down the drain. Because of the heat involved in the process of creating steam, all forms of bacteria and all waterborne diseases are destroyed. Distilled water is the only form of water which is free from all contaminants and impurities. Distilled water is the only clean water. Virtually everything is removed from the water by steam distillation. Dr. Michael Colgan, from Optimum Sports Nutrition. International Space Station Commander Chris Hadfield. Since 2010, we've got a system on board that can purify the water in real time. You don't have to take it out and store it in bags. We have filters and a keg-sized distiller that spins to create artificial gravity and move the wastewater along. Keep in mind that the water that we end up with is purer than most of the water that you drink on a daily basis at home, Hadfield says in the video. That makes the International Space Station its own self-contained environment. That's a critical step towards living for long periods off of planet Earth. Commander Chris Hadfield, Colonel Royal Canadian Air Force, Commander International Space Station and Canadian Space Agency and National Aeronautics and Space Administration, from the video, Water Recycling on the International Space Station. Dr. Ron Kennedy. Now as to the argument that distilled water leaches out minerals. This is true, and this is exactly what we want it to do. The minerals it leaches out are of the unusable, ionic form, and we want these to leave the body rather than be deposited and cause disease. Distilled water does not leach out significant amounts of biologically available minerals because these are quickly taken up by the body on an as-needed basis. If they are present in excess, then they are filtered through the kidneys, and this is exactly what needs to happen with all things which are in excess in the circulation. Distilled water cleanses the body through promoting healthy kidney function. Dr. Ron Kennedy, MD. American Red Cross. While the two methods described above will kill most microbes in water, distillation will remove microbes, germs, that resist these methods, as well as heavy metals, salts, and most other chemicals. Distillation involves boiling water and then collecting only the vapor that condenses. The condensed vapor will not include salt or most other impurities. American Red Cross, www.redcross.org web link. Dr. Ian Shillington. Don't take unnecessary risks, drink healthy, drink distilled. To be sure, several drinks of local tap water will not kill you, but common sense will tell you that your body cannot function and survive with daily ingestion of poison. Dr. Ian Shillington, ND, from The Importance of Distilled Water. Dr. Vera Siedlecki. Distilled water removes poisonous substances and inorganic mineral matter from the human body. This process will be impeded if the water you drink is already contaminated. Only distilled water produces a completely negative ion reaction in the system. Negative ions are alkaline forming. These negative charged ions draw the positively charged acid waste products, flushing them into the elimination channels of the body for excretion. So even though distilled water tests slightly acidic, because of its negative charge, a more alkaline internal systemic environment is created when distilled water is consumed.